The mop moved across the floor in slow, steady strokes, back and forth, back and forth. The man pushing it had done this same motion thousands of times before. His name was Marcus Cole, and he had been a janitor on orbital station Varantis 7 for 6 years. The station was enormous. It floated in space like a small city made of metal and glass. Dozens of alien species walked its corridors every day. They came here to trade, to negotiate, to make deals that affected entire planets. Varantis 7 was one of the most important places in the galaxy, and Marcus cleaned its floors. A group of Torvani merchants walked past him. They were tall beings with blue skin and 4 arms. They spoke loudly about a shipping contract worth millions of credits. Not one of them looked at Marcus. To them, he was not even there. He was just part of the station, like the walls or the lights. This was normal. This was how it had always been since humans joined galactic society 15 years ago. Humanity had celebrated when they first made contact with alien life. They thought they were entering a new age of wonder and cooperation. Instead, they found a galaxy that had been civilized for 100,000 years. Humans were newcomers, primitives. Their technology was laughably outdated. Their history was embarrassingly short. Their planet was small and unimportant. The powerful species of the Hegemony Council had debated whether to even let humans join their civilization. In the end, they decided that humans could be useful for one thing: cheap labor. Humans were tough. They could work long hours, they didn't complain much. And they could survive in conditions that would kill more delicate species. So humans spread across the galaxy as janitors, dock workers, miners, and servants. They cleaned the messes that important people made. They carried boxes that important people needed moved. They fixed machines that important people couldn't be bothered to repair themselves. Marcus understood all of this. He had heard the insults countless times. Primitive apes, dirt creatures, vermin. The aliens said these things openly, right in front of human workers. Why would they hide their contempt? It wasn't like the humans mattered. He finished mopping the corridor and pushed his cart toward the next section. A Scarian officer walked toward him. The Scarian were a reptilian species with green scales and yellow eyes. They were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors. This one wore the uniform of the Galactic Guard, the elite military force that protected the station. The officer did not move aside. He walked straight forward, expecting Marcus to get out of his way. Marcus stepped back against the wall, pulling his cart with him. The Scarian passed without even glancing at him. "Filthy human," the officer muttered. "They should not allow your kind in the upper sections." Marcus said nothing. His face showed nothing. He simply waited until the officer was gone, then continued pushing his cart. He knew that officer. His name was Sub-Commander Drevik. He was 43 years old. He had a gambling addiction that he hid from his superiors. He entered his security code using the same 4-digit pattern every time: 7731. He was having an affair with a female officer in the communications department. His patrol route took him past the ambassador quarters every night at exactly 9 o'clock. Marcus knew all of this because Marcus watched. He listened. He remembered. Nobody paid attention to the janitor. Nobody guarded their words around the cleaning staff. Nobody noticed when the maintenance worker stayed a little too long in a corridor or stood a little too close to a conversation. Why would they? He was just a human. Humans were barely intelligent enough to push a mop. For 6 years, Marcus had pushed his mop through every section of the station. He knew the layout better than the engineers who built it. He knew the patrol schedules better than the security chiefs who made them. He knew the personal secrets of dozens of powerful aliens who had never once looked at his face. He reached the observation deck and began cleaning the large windows that looked out into space. The view was beautiful. Stars burned in the darkness. A distant nebula painted the void in shades of purple and gold. Ships came and went, carrying goods and passengers from 1,000 different worlds. A group of Galactic Guard officers stood nearby, talking in low voices. They wore the black and silver uniforms that marked them as the galaxy's finest soldiers. Each one had been selected from the best warriors of their species. Each one had trained for years in combat techniques, weapon systems, and tactical operations. Marcus cleaned the window and listened. "Commander Vorath has grown impatient," one of them said. He was a tall Kathrani with gray skin and a heavy build. "The council ignores his petitions. They do not care about the outer colonies. What does he plan to do? Asked another, a female Torvani with dark blue markings on her face. I don't know, but something is coming. He has been meeting with officers from other ships. He speaks of change, of forcing the council to listen. Marcus filed this information away. He continued cleaning, moving slowly along the windows, staying close enough to hear but never close enough to seem suspicious. Over the next several days, he gathered more pieces of the puzzle. Commander Vorath, the highest-ranking Scarian in the Galactic Guard, was planning something. Weapons were being moved. Soldiers were being positioned. Messages were being sent through encrypted channels. Marcus reported none of this. He had no one to report it to. His mission was simply to watch, to wait, and to be ready. Those were his orders. Those had always been his orders. On the seventh day, it happened. Marcus was cleaning a corridor near the main atrium when the alarms began. Red lights flashed. Doors slammed shut throughout the station. The computer voice announced an emergency lockdown. Then the shooting started. He heard screams from the atrium. He heard the sound of energy weapons firing. He heard Commander Vorath's voice booming through the station speakers. Attention, citizens of Veranti 7. This station is now under the control of the Liberation Guard. The corrupt Hegemony Council has ignored the suffering of our people for too long. Today we take action. All residents will remain in their current locations. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. We hold over 3,000 hostages, including ambassadors from 12 species. Our demands will be transmitted to the Council within the hour. The transmission ended. Marcus stood in the corridor, mop in hand, as chaos erupted around him. Aliens ran in all directions, panicking, screaming, trying to find safety. Guard soldiers moved through the station, rounding up anyone they found. A squad of 4 soldiers turned into Marcus's corridor. They saw him standing there with his cleaning cart. Human, the lead soldier barked. Down on the ground, hands behind your head. Marcus dropped to his knees. He placed his hands behind his head. He kept his eyes down, his body language submissive. The soldiers barely looked at him. Just a janitor, one of them said. Leave him. He is not worth the trouble. They moved on, searching for more important targets. Marcus stayed on his knees until they were gone. Then he stood up slowly and looked around. The corridor was empty. The lockdown had sealed most of the doors, but Marcus knew other ways to move through the station. Maintenance tunnels, ventilation shafts, service corridors that didn't appear on the official maps. He pushed his cart to a nearby storage closet and stepped inside. He closed the door and stood in the darkness for a moment, thinking. 3,000 hostages, at least 200 guard soldiers loyal to Vorath. The station's communication systems would be locked down. No help would come from outside, not in time. The council would debate and argue and delay, while Vorath grew more desperate. This was not Marcus's problem. His orders were to observe and wait. He was not supposed to take action. He was not supposed to reveal himself. But Marcus thought about the people he had seen in the atrium. Families, children, workers like himself who had done nothing wrong. They would die if someone did not help them. He reached into the back of his cleaning cart and removed a false panel. Behind it was a small compartment. Inside the compartment was a data chip containing his mission files in a single photograph. The photograph showed a woman in a military uniform. She had dark hair and kind eyes. She was smiling at the camera. On the back of the photograph, someone had written, "Stay human, little brother." Marcus looked at the photograph for a long moment. Then he put it back in the compartment, along with the data chip. He had made his decision. Marcus Cole had spent 6 years being invisible. He had perfected the art of being nothing, being nobody, being the man that everyone ignored. Now he would use that invisibility for a different purpose. He knew the station. He knew the guard. He knew their weaknesses, their patterns, their blind spots. He knew things that no enemy should ever know, because no one had ever considered him a threat. Commander Vorath had just seized control of one of the most important stations in the galaxy. He had 200 of the finest soldiers in known space under his command. He had thousands of hostages and a plan that had been months in the making. But he had also made one mistake. He had trapped himself on a station with Marcus Cole. Marcus opened the closet door and stepped back into the corridor. His face was calm. His movements were relaxed. To anyone watching, he was just a janitor going about his work. But behind his eyes, something had changed. The man who had pushed the mop was gone. In his place was something that had been created long ago on a distant planet called Earth. Something that had been forged through years of training that would have broken most humans. Something designed for exactly this kind of situation. Marcus picked up his mop and began walking toward the maintenance tunnels. The hunt had begun. The maintenance tunnel was dark and narrow. Most people would have found it frightening. Marcus found it comfortable. Darkness was an old friend. He moved through the tunnel without making a sound. His feet found the right places to step without his eyes needing to see. This was a skill he had learned long ago, in a place far from here. As he walked, memories came back to him. He did not try to stop them. Sometimes to move forward, you had to look back. Marcus had been born in a military hospital in the mountains of Colorado. His mother had died during childbirth. His father was listed as unknown. He had no family, no connections, no one who would miss him if he disappeared. This made him perfect for the program. Project Cerberus was the most classified operation in Earth's history. It began 35 years ago, when humanity first realized they were not alone in the universe. The governments of Earth had detected alien signals. They had seen alien ships in their solar system. They knew that contact was coming, and they knew that humanity was not ready. Some leaders wanted to build bigger weapons. Others wanted to try diplomacy. But a small group of military and intelligence officials had a different idea. They would create a new kind of soldier, not an army, but a handful of perfect individuals. Humans who could go anywhere, do anything, and defeat any enemy. They started with children, orphans mostly, babies who had no one to ask questions about where they went. The children were raised in hidden facilities, away from the world. They were given the best food, the best medical care, the best education, and they were trained. Marcus could not remember a time when he was not training. His earliest memories were of climbing ropes, solving puzzles, and learning to fight. By the age of 5, he could speak 4 languages. By 7, he could take apart and rebuild most weapons. By 10, he could kill a grown man with his bare hands. But the physical training was only part of it. The program also taught its students how to disappear, how to become invisible, how to blend into any environment and be whoever they needed to be. A student might spend months learning to be a perfect waiter, or a mechanic, or a janitor. The goal was simple. A Cerberus operative should be able to go anywhere in the galaxy without anyone ever knowing what they really were. When humanity finally made official contact with alien civilizations, the Cerberus students were ready. They were sent out into the galaxy, one by one, with simple cover stories. They became the humans that aliens expected to see. Workers, servants, laborers. Invisible and unimportant. Their orders were to watch and wait, learn the galaxy, study its species, its politics, its weaknesses. Prepare for the day when Earth might need to defend itself against enemies who thought humans were nothing but primitive apes. Marcus had been assigned to Verantis 7 because of its importance. Ambassadors from dozens of species passed through this station. Secrets were traded here. Alliances were made and broken. If you wanted to understand galactic politics, this was the place to be. For 6 years, he had done exactly what he was trained to do. He watched, he listened, he learned, and he waited. But today, the waiting was over. Marcus emerged from the maintenance tunnel into a small equipment room. He checked his surroundings carefully before moving to a computer terminal. The terminal was used by maintenance staff to monitor the station systems. It was not connected to the main network, which meant Vorath's people had not locked it down. He pulled up the station's internal sensors. Most were offline, but a few still worked. He could see where the guard soldiers were positioned. They had concentrated their forces in 3 areas: the main atrium, the command center, and the ambassador quarters. Smaller patrols moved through the station's corridors, searching for anyone who had escaped the initial roundup. He studied the patterns. The patrols moved in predictable routes. They checked the same areas at the same times. This was standard military procedure, and it was also a weakness. When you knew exactly where someone would be, and when they would be there, you could avoid them, or you could find them. Marcus left the equipment room and moved through a series of service corridors. These passages were used by maintenance workers to travel around the station without bothering the important people. They were narrow, poorly lit, and completely ignored by the guard. He stopped when he heard voices ahead. Two soldiers were standing at an intersection, guarding a door. Beyond that door, according to his mental map, was a section of crew quarters where dozens of station workers were trapped. Marcus watched the soldiers from the shadows. They were both Kathrani, the gray-skinned species known for their strength and endurance. They carried energy rifles and wore light armor. One of them looked bored. The other looked nervous. The bored one was the dangerous one. He was calm and confident. He would react quickly if something went wrong. The nervous one would hesitate. He would look to his partner for guidance. Marcus considered his options. He had no weapons. His cleaning cart was back in the main corridors. All he had was his uniform, his hands, and his training. That would be enough. He moved to a nearby utility closet and found what he needed: a length of electrical cable and a heavy wrench. Not ideal, but useful. He also found a spray can of cleaning solvent. The label warned that the contents were toxic if inhaled. He made his way through a ventilation shaft until he was directly above the two soldiers. Then he waited. Patience was the most important weapon. Most people failed not because they lacked skill, but because they acted too quickly. 20 minutes passed. The soldiers shifted their positions. They talked quietly about their families, their homes, the money they had been promised for joining Vorath's rebellion. They did not look up. Why would they? The threat would come from the corridors, not from above. Marcus dropped through the ventilation grate. He landed on the nervous soldier first, driving his knee into the alien's neck. The Kathrani collapsed without a sound. Before the bored soldier could react, Marcus sprayed the cleaning solvent directly into his face. The alien gasped, inhaling the toxic fumes. His eyes burned. His lungs seized. He stumbled backward, trying to raise his rifle. Marcus hit him with the wrench. Once. Twice. The soldier fell. The entire fight had taken less than 4 seconds. Marcus checked both soldiers. They were alive but unconscious. He pulled them into a nearby storage room and bound their hands with their electrical cable. Then he took one of their communication devices and listened. The guard was using encrypted channels, but Marcus had spent 6 years learning their codes. He understood enough to follow their conversations. Patrols were being redirected. Officers were arguing about supply distribution. And Commander Vorath was demanding updates on the search for resistance elements. They knew something was wrong. Soldiers were not reporting in on time. Communications were experiencing technical difficulties. But they did not know what was causing these problems. They blamed equipment failure. They blamed the stress of the operation. They blamed each other. They did not blame the janitor. Marcus moved on. He found the door controls and opened the crew quarters. Inside, he found 37 station workers huddled in fear. They were a mix of species, including several humans. When they saw Marcus, they panicked. "Please," a Torvani woman begged. "We are not resistance. We are just workers." "I know," Marcus said calmly. "The guards outside are unconscious. There is a maintenance tunnel behind the food storage units on Deck 7. It leads to the cargo bay on the station's lower level. The guard has not secured that area yet. You can hide there until help arrives." The workers stared at him in confusion. One of the humans, a young man who worked in the kitchens, stepped forward. "Who are you?" he asked. "Nobody," Marcus said. "Just go. Quickly and quietly. Stay in the maintenance tunnels. Avoid the main corridors." He did not wait for them to respond. He was already moving to his next target. Over the next several hours, Marcus worked his way through the station. He freed trapped workers. He disabled guard soldiers. He sabotaged communications equipment, making it look like random malfunctions. He never stayed in one place long enough to be seen clearly. He never left witnesses who could describe him. The guard began to notice that something was wrong. Soldiers disappeared. Hostages escaped. Equipment failed at the worst possible times. But they could not understand what was happening. Their enemies were supposed to be outside the station, not inside it. The people inside were hostages, workers, servants. None of them were threats. Commander Vorath received report after report of problems. He grew angry. He accused his officers of incompetence. He demanded that they find the source of the disruptions. But how do you find an enemy you cannot see? How do you fight someone who knows your every move before you make it? How do you defeat a ghost? In a small room near the engineering section, Marcus paused to rest. He had been moving for 8 hours without stopping. His body was tired, but his mind was clear. He had freed over 200 hostages and disabled 18 soldiers. The guards' communications were compromised. Their patrols were confused. Their morale was beginning to crack. But the hardest part was still ahead. He checked the communication device he had taken. Commander Vorath had just made an announcement to his troops. The council had refused his demands. In response, Vorath would execute 10 hostages at dawn, which was 6 hours away. If the council continued to refuse, he would execute 10 more every hour after that. Marcus looked at the wall. Someone had written a message there in alien script. He could not read it, but he recognized the symbol at the end. It was a prayer to one of the old gods of the Torvani people, a prayer for mercy. Mercy was not part of Marcus's training. The program had taught him many things, but not that. Yet he thought of the workers he had saved. He thought of the fear in their eyes when they looked at him. He thought of his sister's photograph and the words she had written on the back. "Stay human, little brother." He stood up and began planning his next move. Dawn was coming, and before it arrived, he had a lot of work to do. Fear is a strange thing. It does not need to see its enemy. It does not need proof. Fear only needs a shadow, a whisper, a feeling that something is wrong. And on orbital station Varenta 7, fear was spreading through the Galactic Guard like a disease. In the security office near the main atrium, Sub-Commander Drevek was arguing with 3 other officers. The room was tense. Voices were raised. Tempers were short. 17 soldiers, Drevek shouted. 17 of our people have gone missing in the last 10 hours. This is not equipment failure. This is not coincidence. Something is hunting us. What would you have us do? Replied a female Skarian officer named Vathis. We have searched every corridor. We have checked every room. We found nothing. Then search again. Search harder. With what forces? Commander Vorath has pulled half our patrols to guard the hostages. We are spread too thin. Drevek slammed his fist on the table. Then spread thinner. I will not lose any more soldiers to this phantom. None of them heard the soft sound from the ventilation shaft above their heads. None of them saw the pair of eyes watching through the metal grate. Marcus had been listening to their argument for 10 minutes. He had learned several useful things. The guard was down to fewer than 180 operational soldiers. They were concentrated in 3 locations: the command center, where Vorath directed operations, the main atrium, where most of the hostages were held, and the ambassador quarters, where the most valuable prisoners were kept. The connecting corridors were patrolled, but the patrols were getting smaller as commanders pulled soldiers back to the main positions. Fear was making them defensive. They were grouping together for safety. This was exactly what Marcus wanted. He moved silently through the ventilation system until he reached a junction near the medical bay. A patrol of 6 soldiers was stationed there, guarding a group of injured hostages. 6 was a large number, but Marcus had a plan. He worked his way to the station's environmental control room. This was where the air, temperature, and lighting for the entire station were managed. 2 technicians should have been on duty, but they had been taken hostage hours ago. The room was empty. Marcus sat down at the main console. His fingers moved across the controls with practiced speed. He did not need to hack into the system. He had learned the access codes months ago by watching maintenance workers enter them. They had never noticed the janitor cleaning the floor behind them. He made small changes, subtle changes. The lighting in Corridor 7 would flicker for exactly 3 seconds every 4 minutes. The temperature in Sector 12 would drop slowly over the next hour. The air recycling system would make a soft clicking sound near the medical bay. These changes meant nothing by themselves. But to soldiers already afraid of an invisible enemy, they would be terrifying. Every flicker would make them jump. Every strange sound would make them reach for their weapons. Fear would exhaust them. Fear would make them careless. Marcus left the environmental control room and made his way toward the medical bay. He moved through passages that did not appear on any official map. Maintenance workers knew about these shortcuts. They used them to avoid the busy main corridors. The guard had never bothered to learn about them. Why would elite soldiers care about the paths used by cleaners? He stopped when he heard footsteps ahead. A 2-soldier patrol was moving through a service corridor. They walked slowly, checking every shadow, jumping at every noise. Their weapons were raised and ready. These were not careless soldiers anymore. These were scared soldiers. Scared soldiers made mistakes, but they also shot first and asked questions later. Marcus would need to be careful. He waited until they passed, then continued toward the medical bay. He found a position in a storage room overlooking the main entrance. From here, he could see the 6 guards and the door they protected. He studied them. 3 Kathrani, 2 Skarian, 1 Torvani. They stood in a tight formation, watching every direction. Their communication devices crackled with nervous chatter from other patrols. They were tired and tense. The lights flickered. All 6 soldiers spun toward different directions, weapons raised. One of them fired at a shadow in the corner. The energy bolt hit nothing but wall. The others shouted at him to hold fire. "It was nothing," one of the Kathrani said. "Just the lights. Calm down." "I saw something," the shooter insisted. "There was movement." "There is always movement. We are jumping at air now." Marcus waited for them to settle. Then he pulled out a small device he had built from parts scavenged throughout the station. It was crude but effective, a simple noisemaker that could produce sounds at different frequencies. He set it to make a soft scratching sound and rolled it down a side corridor. The scratching echoed through the empty passage. "What was that?" one of the soldiers whispered. "Nothing." "Probably a maintenance robot." The robots were all shut down during the lockdown. They listened. The scratching continued. It seemed to move, coming closer, then fading away. "Go check it," the lead soldier ordered 2 of his squad. "We will hold position here." The 2 soldiers moved down the corridor, weapons ready. Marcus watched them go. Then he moved. He dropped from a ceiling access panel behind the remaining 4 soldiers. His feet hit the ground silently. Before any of them could turn, he struck. The first soldier fell to a precise hit to the base of his skull. The second turned just in time to receive a spray of chemical solvent to the face. The third raised his weapon, but Marcus was already inside his guard, redirecting the rifle upward as it fired. The shot hit the ceiling. Marcus drove his elbow into the soldier's throat and swept his legs out from under him. The 4th soldier, the Torvani, had time to shout once before Marcus's hand closed around his neck. The shout was cut short. The soldier slumped to the floor. 15 seconds. 4 soldiers neutralized. Marcus moved quickly to deal with the 2 soldiers who had gone to investigate the noise. They heard the shout and were running back toward the medical bay. They came around the corner with weapons raised and found themselves facing an empty corridor. Empty except for a janitor's mop leaning against the wall. They hesitated. That moment of confusion was all Marcus needed. He emerged from a doorway behind them. 2 quick strikes, and they joined their companions on the floor. He opened the medical bay door. Inside, he found 43 hostages, including several who were injured. A human doctor named Sarah Chen was treating them. She looked up when Marcus entered, fear on her face. "Don't be afraid," Marcus said. "I am going to get you out of here." "Who are you?" she asked. "A friend." He gave them directions to a safe hiding spot in the station's lower levels. He had prepared several such locations, places where the guard would not think to search. The hostages moved quickly and quietly, helping the injured between them. Dr. Chen was the last to leave. She stopped at the door and looked at Marcus. "I've treated some of the soldiers you fought," she said. "You could have killed them, but they were just unconscious." Marcus said nothing. "Why?" she asked. "Why hold back?" For a long moment, Marcus was silent. Then he said, "Because killing is easy. Choosing not to kill is hard, and I have spent my whole life doing what is easy." The doctor nodded slowly. "Good luck," she said. "Whatever you are planning, good luck." Then she was gone. Marcus continued his work. Throughout the night, he moved through the station like a ghost. He attacked patrols. He freed hostages. He destroyed equipment. He left no trace except unconscious soldiers and empty rooms where prisoners should have been. By the time dawn approached, the guard was in chaos. Rumors had spread through their ranks. Some soldiers whispered that there was a whole team of assassins aboard. Others claimed it was a single being, something not quite human, something that could walk through walls and appear from shadows. Commander Vorath had stopped dismissing the reports. He had lost 60 soldiers and over 1,000 hostages. His secure communications were compromised. His patrols were afraid to walk the corridors alone. In the ambassador quarters, a human woman named Lieutenant Kira Voss sat among the high-value hostages. She was the station's human liaison officer, one of the few humans who held any real position in galactic society. She had been taken captive with the ambassadors when the coup began, but she had noticed something. The pattern of attacks, the precision, the way the attackers seemed to know exactly where to strike and when. This was not random terrorism. This was systematic warfare conducted by someone with perfect knowledge of the station, and Kira had seen a glimpse of him. Just once when the lights flickered during a hostage rescue near her location. A brief look at a figure moving through the shadows. Human. Male. Wearing a maintenance uniform. She recognized the uniform. She had walked past 100 humans wearing that same uniform without ever really seeing them. The janitor. It was the janitor. Kira sat very still, thinking about what this meant. Somewhere on this station, a human cleaning worker was single-handedly destroying an elite military force. She did not know whether to feel hope or terror, maybe both. In the main atrium, Commander Vorath stood before the remaining hostages. His scales were dark with anger. His yellow eyes burned with fury. Behind him, his surviving soldiers formed a defensive line. They were not searching the corridors anymore. They were staying together. "Seal all sections," Vorath commanded. "Every soldier to the atrium. We consolidate our forces here. I will not have my people picked off one by one." "Commander," one of his officers said carefully, "if we bring everyone here, we cannot control the rest of the station." "I do not care about the rest of the station. I care about surviving long enough to complete our mission. The Council will respond to our demands. They have no choice, and whoever is attacking us will have to show themselves eventually." He turned to look at the hundreds of hostages huddled in the center of the atrium. Families, workers, diplomats, all of them terrified. "When they do show themselves," Vorath said quietly, "we will be ready." In the darkness of a ventilation shaft overlooking the atrium, Marcus watched and listened. He counted soldiers. He studied positions. He measured distances and calculated angles. 200 soldiers, thousands of hostages. One man against an army. The odds were interesting. Marcus began to plan. The main atrium of Varantis 7 was a massive space. It rose 4 levels high, with balconies overlooking a central floor large enough to hold thousands. Crystal windows lined the upper walls, showing the stars beyond. Under normal circumstances, it was a beautiful place where travelers from across the galaxy gathered to rest and talk. Now it was a prison. Nearly 2,000 hostages sat huddled on the cold floor. They were surrounded by what remained of Commander Vorath's forces, 173 soldiers, all armed, all scared, all watching the shadows for signs of the enemy that had been hunting them for hours. Marcus studied the scene from his position in the ventilation system. He had spent the last hour moving through the hidden spaces around the atrium, mapping guard positions, identifying escape routes, and preparing for what came next. The situation was not good. The soldiers were packed too tightly together. They covered every angle. Any direct assault would be suicide, and even if Marcus reached them, the hostages would be caught in the crossfire. He needed a different approach. For the past 12 hours, he had been taking the station apart piece by piece, not destroying it, but understanding it. Every system, every weakness, every point of failure. The station's designers had built redundancies into everything, but redundancies could be exploited just like weaknesses. Marcus moved to his first position, a power junction on the 3rd level. He had rigged it hours ago with components from a maintenance kit. One wire crossed, and the entire eastern lighting grid would go dark. He checked his timing. Everything had to happen at once. He moved to his second position, an air circulation hub near the atrium ceiling. He had modified the filters to release a thick, harmless smoke when triggered. The smoke would not hurt anyone, but it would fill the atrium within seconds. Third position, the emergency bulkhead controls. He had overridden the safety locks hours ago. When activated, heavy doors would slam shut throughout the atrium, dividing the space into sections. Fourth position, the speaker system. He had recorded messages using voice samples from Commander Vorath's own communications. At the right moment, those messages would cause chaos and confusion. Marcus returned to his observation point and took a breath. What he was about to do was either very clever or very stupid. Probably both. He pressed the first trigger. The lights on the eastern side of the atrium died instantly. Soldiers shouted in alarm. Weapons swung toward the sudden darkness. Officers screamed orders that nobody could hear over the noise. Marcus pressed the second trigger. White smoke poured from the ventilation system, filling the air in seconds. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The atrium became a maze of swirling fog and confused shadows. He pressed the third trigger. Emergency bulkheads crashed down from the ceiling, dividing the atrium into 8 separate sections. Soldiers found themselves cut off from each other, unable to see their allies or their enemies. He pressed the fourth trigger. Commander Varath's voice boomed through the speakers. "Fall back to the command center. All units, fall back immediately. We are under attack." The voice was fake, assembled from fragments of real communications. But in the smoke and darkness, with bulkheads falling and chaos everywhere, no one could tell the difference. Some soldiers obeyed the order, rushing toward exits that led deeper into the station. Others stayed, confused about whether to follow or hold position. Unit cohesion collapsed. The tight formation that had protected them scattered into small groups, lost in the fog. Marcus moved. He dropped from the ventilation system into the smoke. He could not see more than a few feet, but he did not need to. He had memorized the layout of the atrium perfectly. He knew where every pillar stood, where every door opened, where every balcony hung. And he knew where the soldiers were, their frightened shouts, their heavy footsteps, the crackle of their communication devices. They announced their positions as clearly as signal flares. He found the first group, 3 soldiers huddled behind a pillar, weapons pointed at nothing. They never saw him coming. He struck fast and silent, leaving all 3 unconscious before they could fire a shot. The second group was larger, 7 soldiers trying to force open a bulkhead door. Marcus circled behind them through the smoke. He attacked from their blind spot, taking 2 down before the others realized he was there. In the confusion, one soldier fired at a shadow and hit his own ally. Marcus finished the rest in seconds. He kept moving. He was not fighting an army anymore. He was fighting frightened individuals lost in a storm, and one by one he removed them from the battle. The smoke began to thin after 20 minutes. By then, it no longer mattered. Nearly half of Vorath's soldiers were unconscious or disabled. The rest had retreated to the command center with their leader, dragging the highest value hostages with them. The atrium was quiet now. Hostages blinked in the clearing air, looking around at the aftermath. Dozens of guard soldiers lay scattered across the floor, unconscious but alive. Among them, moving through the fog like something not quite real, was a figure in a maintenance uniform. Lieutenant Kira Voss saw him clearly for the first time. He was not tall or particularly muscular. He had ordinary brown hair and ordinary features. Nothing about him seemed special or dangerous. But she watched him walk through the atrium, and she saw the way he moved. Every step was precise. Every motion was efficient. There was no wasted energy, no uncertainty. He moved like someone who knew exactly what was happening and exactly what would happen next. This was not a man. This was a weapon. She called out to him, "Hey! Hey, wait!" He stopped and turned toward her. His eyes were calm and cold. "The others," she said. "The hostages they took to the command center. What about them?" "I will get them. Vorath has a dead man switch. He rigged it to vent the station's atmosphere. If you try to take him down, he will kill everyone." Marcus nodded slowly. "I know." "Then what are you going to do?" For a moment, something flickered behind those cold eyes, something almost human. "I am going to give him a choice." He turned and walked toward the command center. Kira watched him go, her heart pounding. She had served on this station for 3 years. She had seen thousands of beings pass through its corridors. Soldiers, diplomats, merchants, criminals. She had never seen anyone like this. She found herself whispering a prayer she had learned as a child on Earth. A prayer for protection. She did not know if it was for the hostages or for Commander Vorath, or for the strange quiet man walking alone into the darkness. Maybe for all of them. The command center was located in the central core of the station. It was the most secure room on Varanti 7, designed to survive catastrophic damage. The walls were reinforced. The doors were blast-proof. The systems inside controlled everything from life support to communications. Commander Vorath had sealed himself inside with 20 of his most loyal soldiers and 30 high-value hostages, including several ambassadors. His finger rested on a trigger connected to the station's airlock systems. One press, and every external door on the station would open at once. Everyone would die. The commander stood in front of a communication screen, his scales dark with fury and fear. "Show yourself," he roared into the station speakers. "I know you can hear me. I know you are out there. Show yourself or I will start killing hostages right now." Silence. "You think you can defeat me? You think you can take this station back? I will kill every living thing here before I surrender. Come and face me, coward." A voice came through the intercom. It was calm and quiet. "I am here." Vorath spun toward the main door. Outside, visible through the reinforced window, stood a single figure, a human. He wore a maintenance uniform that was dirty and torn. His hands were empty. He did not look like a warrior or a soldier. He looked like what he was supposed to be, a janitor. "You," Vorath breathed, "you are the one who has been destroying my forces?" "Yes." "A human? A cleaning worker?" The commander's voice rose with disbelief and rage. "I have 200 of the finest soldiers in the galaxy, and they were beaten by vermin with a mop? Your soldiers are not dead, just unconscious. I tried not to kill anyone." This seemed to confuse Vorath more than anything else. "Why? We would have killed you without hesitation." "I know. Then why show mercy?" Through the window, Marcus met the commander's eyes. "Because I was made to kill. Every person I let live is a choice I make to be something different." Vorath stared at him. Behind the commander, the hostages huddled in terror. The soldiers gripped their weapons. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. "You cannot get through this door," Vorath said, "and even if you could, I will trigger the switch before you reach me. You have achieved nothing. I disabled your switch 3 hours ago." Vorath's finger tightened on the trigger. He pressed it. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. Nothing. "While your soldiers were searching the corridors," Marcus continued, "I was rewiring the airlock controls. The switch is not connected to anything anymore." The commander's scales went pale. He grabbed one of the hostages, a Torvani ambassador, and put a gun to her head. "Stay back. I will kill her." "You can kill her. You can kill all of them. But then what? Your revolution is over. Your soldiers are defeated. The council will send forces to retake this station. You will die here and your people's grievances will be forgotten. Is that what you want? What I want is to make them listen. Then make them listen. Put down the gun. Surrender. I will ensure that your message reaches the council. Your people's concerns will be heard." Vorath's hand trembled. "Why would you do that?" "Because sometimes enemies become allies. Because mercy creates more than destruction. Because I would rather build something than tear it down." The commander stood frozen, his gun pressed against the ambassador's temple. His soldiers watched him, waiting for orders. The hostages barely breathed. And Marcus waited. He had learned many things in his life. He had learned how to fight, how to kill, how to survive. But his sister had taught him one more thing, in the letters she wrote to him before she died. The hardest battles are not won with violence. Sometimes you win by giving your enemy a choice. The command center was silent except for the soft hum of machines and the ragged breathing of frightened hostages. Commander Vorath stood frozen, his gun still pressed against the ambassador's head, his yellow eyes fixed on the human outside the reinforced door. One moment stretched into another. The universe seemed to hold its breath. "You are lying," Vorath said finally. "The council does not negotiate with terrorists. They do not listen to the concerns of dying species. They will destroy me, and my people will be forgotten." "Maybe," Marcus replied through the intercom, "or maybe not. But if you kill these people and die here today, your cause ends with you. If you surrender, there is a chance. A small one. But a chance is more than nothing." "How do I know you will keep your word?" "You don't, but you have two choices. Trust me or die here achieving nothing. I am giving you a third option that you did not have before." Vorath's gun hand trembled. Behind him, his soldiers watched with uncertain eyes. They had followed him because they believed in his cause. They had believed they were fighting for their people's future. Now they stood in a room surrounded by enemies, their revolution in ruins, their leader holding a gun to a hostage's head. This was not how it was supposed to end. One of the soldiers, a young Skarian named Therex, lowered his weapon. "Commander," he said quietly, "maybe we should listen." "Silence!" Vorath roared. "Sir, our people need us alive. If we die here, who will speak for them? Who will remember what we were trying to do?" Vorath turned on him with rage in his eyes, but he saw the same doubt reflected in the faces of his other soldiers. They were tired, they were scared, and they were beginning to realize that their commander had led them into a situation with no good ending. The gun wavered. Marcus spoke again, his voice calm and steady. "I know why you did this. I listened to your transmissions. Your species is being pushed out of your home systems. Your colonies are dying. The Council ignores your petitions because you have nothing they want. You felt like you had no other choice. You know nothing about us," Vorath spat. "I know what it feels like to be treated as nothing. I know what it feels like when powerful beings look through you like you do not exist. I am a human. We clean your floors and carry your garbage. Do you think I do not understand desperation?" Something shifted in Vorath's expression. The rage remained, but beneath it, Marcus could see exhaustion, fear, and somewhere, buried deep, the faintest flicker of hope. "You would speak for us?" Vorath asked. "A human. I will tell the Council what you told your soldiers. I will make sure your grievances are recorded. Whether they listen is beyond my control, but your voice will be heard. That is all I can promise." The silence stretched on. Seconds became minutes. The hostages trembled. The soldiers waited. And Commander Vorath, leader of a failed revolution, stood at the crossroads between two futures. Finally, slowly, he lowered his gun. "I am trusting you," he said. "If you betray me, my ghost will haunt you until the end of time. If I betray you, I will deserve it." Vorath looked at his soldiers. "Stand down. All of you. It is over." The soldiers lowered their weapons. Some of them looked relieved. Others looked ashamed. All of them looked lost, like children who had suddenly realized they were far from home with no way back. Marcus walked to the command center door. It was locked from inside, sealed by Vorath's own security codes. He could have forced it open. He had prepared several methods to breach the room. Instead, he waited. The door hissed open. Commander Vorath stood on the other side, his weapon on the floor, his hands at his sides. He was taller than Marcus by nearly a foot, his scales a deep green, his eyes like molten gold. He had commanded armies. He had planned the capture of one of the most important stations in the galaxy. He had held thousands of lives in his clawed hands, and he had been defeated by a janitor. "What are you?" Vorath asked quietly. "You are not just a cleaner. No cleaner could do what you did." "I am what my world made me," Marcus replied. "Just as you are what your circumstances made you. We are both products of desperation. The difference is that I had more time to prepare. And now, what happens to me? Now you face justice. You will answer for the soldiers who were hurt and the fear you caused. But I will keep my promise. Your people's story will be heard." Vorath nodded slowly. Then, to Marcus's surprise, the commander did something that no Skarian had ever done to a human before. He lowered his head in a gesture of respect. "We called your species vermin," Vorath said. "We were wrong. Whatever you are not vermin." Marcus did not smile. He did not gloat. He simply nodded in acknowledgement and stepped aside as security forces from a council rescue fleet finally boarded the station. The crisis was over. In the hours that followed, the full story began to emerge. The Hegemony Council learned that a single human, a maintenance worker with no official combat training on record, had defeated 200 elite Galactic Guard soldiers and freed nearly 3,000 hostages without killing a single enemy combatant. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Some species reacted with fear. If one human could do this, what could 100 do? 1,000? What were these primitive apes really capable of? Others reacted with curiosity. Humans had been dismissed for so long. Perhaps it was time to look more closely at these newcomers. And on Earth, in hidden facilities that did not officially exist, certain officials watched the reports with quiet satisfaction. Project Cerberus had proven its worth. The sleeper agents were ready. If the galaxy ever threatened humanity, it would learn too late just how dangerous the invisible species could be. But Marcus knew none of this. He sat in a small medical bay, letting Dr. Sarah Chen treat the wounds he had collected during the night's fighting. Cuts, bruises, a cracked rib. Nothing serious. He had survived worse. "You are remarkable," Dr. Chen said as she wrapped a bandage around his arm. "You know that, right? What you did tonight, it should not have been possible. I had good training." "That is not what I mean." She finished the bandage and looked at him seriously. "You could have killed them. All of them. It would have been easier and faster, but you chose not to. Why?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "When I was young, I had a sister. She was not part of the program. She was just a normal girl who happened to share my blood. She wrote me letters, even though she was not supposed to know I existed. She told me that our world had enough killers. She asked me to be something different. What happened to her? She died. A car accident. Nothing dramatic, just bad luck." He looked at the floor. "The last thing she wrote to me was 'Stay human, little brother.' I have been trying to figure out what that means ever since." Dr. Chen did not know what to say, so she simply placed her hand on his shoulder for a moment before stepping back. Lieutenant Kira Voss found Marcus an hour later, sitting alone in an observation lounge watching the stars. She sat down beside him without asking permission. "The council wants to give you a medal," she said. "Probably several medals, and a title, maybe a planet." "I do not want medals." "I figured. What do you want?" Marcus thought about it. "There is a mining colony in the outer territories. They need someone to maintain their equipment. The pay is terrible, and the work is boring." Kira stared at him. "You just saved thousands of lives and humiliated the most powerful military force in the galaxy. And you want to fix mining equipment? I want to be invisible again. I want to push a mop and clean floors and have nobody look at me twice. That is what I am good at." "You are good at a lot more than that." "I know, that is the problem." Kira was quiet for a while. Then she asked the question that had been burning in her mind since she first saw him walk through the smoke of the atrium. "Who are you? Really?" Marcus turned to look at her. His eyes were tired but peaceful. "I am Marcus Cole. I was born in Colorado and raised in a facility that does not exist. I have killed more people than I can count and saved more than I can remember. I have spent most of my life being nothing and nobody. And I have finally figured out that being nobody is not a punishment. It is a choice." He stood up and looked out at the stars one last time. "Goodbye, Lieutenant. I hope we never meet again. For your sake and mine." Then he walked away. 3 weeks later, on a dusty mining colony at the edge of known space, a new maintenance worker arrived on a supply transport. He was quiet and polite. He did his job without complaint. He kept to himself and bothered nobody. The miners barely noticed him. He was just another human, doing the kind of work that humans always did. Nothing special, nothing important. But sometimes, late at night, he would stand at the observation window and watch the ships passing in the distance. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, military vessels, each one carrying people with their own fears and hopes and dreams. And he would think about a sister he had lost, and a choice he had made, and a galaxy that would never feel quite safe again. Because the Hegemony Council had finally realized the truth. Humans were not primitive. They were not vermin. They were not harmless workers suitable only for menial labor. They were something far more dangerous. They were patient. And now across 1,000 worlds, in maintenance tunnels and kitchens and cargo bays, other invisible humans went about their quiet work. Watching, waiting, ready. Marcus Cole picked up his mop and began cleaning the floor. Somewhere in the hidden corners of the galaxy, other janitors did the same, and the universe held its breath.